Hey guys, it's Eric. Welcome to part 3 of my travel series with An Ostomy. In this part, I'm going to talk about how to manage your appliance when you're at your destination and how to have a fun trip. So stay tuned. Now, once your plane has arrived at the airport, one of the first things that I like to do is just empty my appliance. I know that sometimes, the bag starts to get full, especially as you're, coming off the plane and things like that. You probably have been sleeping. So I just find that emptying my appliance before I reach the customs and security checkouts and that sort of thing, it makes things a lot easier. Just like when you were at the airport ready to depart, when you land at your destination, you're probably going to have to go through some kind of security checkpoint. You'll certainly have to go through some kind of customs checkpoint. And that usually just requires a bit of extra paperwork. But if you do go through one of the security checkpoints, the process is pretty much going to be the same as what I discussed in the last part. And there shouldn't be any real concerns about that. Now, once you're done at the airport and you're heading to your hotel, when you get to your hotel, depending on what time it is, to be honest, I would just lay out my supplies so that I have them handy, or at least keep them in the bathroom so that I have them handy if I need to do an appliance change or anything like that. Most of the times, the hotel bathrooms will be, fully furnished with everything you're going to need. So keeping your supplies there will make things super easy for you. Okay, so 2 things about bathrooms in your hotel room. Now, for some people who like to use the shampoos and the soaps, the little bottles that you get in your hotel bathroom, if you tend to shower with your wafer off, a lot of the soaps might leave a residue, especially conditioners. They might leave a residue on your skin that'll make it hard for you to get another appliance on. So what I would suggest personally is if you have that trouble, bring your own soap or use a brand that you know is not going to give you any issues. Or if you're using some of the soap that came with it and you're not 100% sure how it's going to affect your skin, just make sure that you really clean the area well with just plain water before you actually apply your appliance. And that way it'll get rid of any kind of residue that might be on there, and that might prevent your wafer from sticking on your skin. Because our stoma is kind of like a gateway into our body, you also want to be cautious when you're using tap water to clean the area around your stoma. Some people may prefer to just bring a bottled water, keep it in the bathroom, and then use that when you have to clean. Now that's totally optional, but it is something that you can certainly do to help minimize any risk. Now another tip that I do want to mention is that a lot of the hotels will have people coming in, to make the beds, for example, change the sheets, and they'll usually go around and replace things in your bathroom. They'll change the garbage bin or the waste bin in your bathroom. But having said that, if you're changing your appliance and you're using that bin, you want to make sure that you're bringing some kind of odor-resistant bag or something to put it in, because even if it has to sit there for several hours, it may create an odor that you don't want in your hotel room. So that's something that I would do. They do have special bags that you can use specifically to put your soiled appliance in. So that might be something to consider, or at least double bag whatever you've brought with you. Now, there are some things to keep in mind when you are traveling and eating new foods. You may experience increased gas. You may have a change in your bowel habits, so you may all of a sudden notice that you're getting liquid output or you're having to empty more frequently. And then obviously there's the risk of traveler's diarrhea, which can affect anyone anywhere. So there are ways of minimizing these risks, and I'm going to give you a few tips to help with that. So the first thing that I would suggest is know what you're getting. If you know that you have a food sensitivity or an allergy, for example, to gluten, ask your server to make sure that certain ingredients are excluded. I know for myself, obviously I avoid dairy, eggs, and any kind of animal products, so I'll ask the servers whether or not there's anything in there. And if there's any trigger foods that upset your stomach, if there's spicy food, for example, that will create issues with your stoma, be sure to communicate that with your waitress, and then that way you're getting exactly what you're looking for. For some people, drinking coffee or red wine, for example, might create almost like a diarrhea. Just avoid those foods. If you know that you have specific trigger foods, perhaps get an alternative or skip it altogether. The last thing you want to do is spend the next 6 hours in the bathroom because you decided to have something that you know is going to cause issues, and it's definitely not something you want to be doing when you're on a vacation. Now, some of us like to have street food. Just be wary of where you're getting the street food. Make sure that, you know, the vendor does look clean. They look like they're following basic food hygiene practices. So if there's a sketchy place that you know probably may not be the best bet for you, avoid it because you don't want to really have that risk of eating something that might be contaminated. Now, another tip that everyone seems to recommend, especially places like the CDC, if you're at a restaurant, get bottled water and make sure it's still sealed. I know sometimes they'll give it to you with the top off. No, don't do that. Another thing is to make sure that if you are drinking water, boil it if you can. I know that a lot of hotel rooms will have like a coffee maker. You can boil water there, let it cool down and have that if you're super unsure, or just bring bottled water with you. Also keep in mind that ice can also be a culprit for traveler's diarrhea. So if you can, request that your drinks be served without ice, and just be cautious of that. And this could even be ice coming from a hotel or your restaurant. So, you do have to be cautious in certain areas, not everywhere. Now, try to have a backup plan when you're out and about. For me, that involves carrying my emergency supplies with me, and that will always include some kind of gelling agent. So in the unlikely event that I do get some unexpected liquid output, I can always throw some of the gelling sachets in my bag, and that will solidify it and make it a little easier. Another thing that I like to do is I like to be aware of where the bathrooms are. So if I'm at a restaurant, I may ask, before I actually get served where the bathrooms might be in case I need to empty my appliance at that time. So be aware of what your surroundings are and make sure that you always have a way to get to a bathroom if you need to. Keeping Imodium with you can also come in handy. That will help to slow down your bowel movements, and for some people that might be a huge lifesaver if they're out and about, perhaps in a place that doesn't have bathrooms that are very easily accessible. So that's something also to keep in mind. So as I mentioned, you're always going to want to keep emergency supplies with you. And that's definitely going to be an important thing if you're going out, for example, on a tour. When you're at your destination, you want to always have your emergency supplies with you. Now, there are a couple of additional things that you might want to keep in mind, and this will depend a lot on where you're going and what exactly you're doing. But here are some things that you should definitely take note of. So try to keep your supplies waterproof. So that might involve just simply putting them in a Ziploc bag or putting them in some other container that will keep them waterproof. And that's especially important if you're going to be doing some kind of water activity. If you're on a boat, for example, that might have a tendency to get some water in there, keep your supplies in a place that they're going to stay dry. Now, at the same time, you want to be aware of extreme temperatures. So when I was in South Africa, it got super, super hot. And I always made sure that I was keeping my supplies in my backpack, but my backpack actually has some insulation to it because it does hold a water bladder. So I was able to put it in there to keep it relatively protected from that heat. But you might want to consider, for example, bringing an insulated lunch bag to keep your supplies in if you don't have the luxury of carrying a backpack that's insulated with you. The same thing applies if you're going to a very cold climate. Make sure that your supplies aren't subject to that freezing temperature. Keep them in a place that they're going to stay nice and cozy so that you avoid any kind of complications. Another thing that I like to do is I like to keep odor-proof bags with me so that if I am in the situation where I need to change my appliance, I'm able to do so confidently, and I know that I'm not going to create a big stink. Medical tape is going to be a big asset for you. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife of supplies. So with medical tape, you can repair, for example, a torn bag if you happen to not have an extra, or if you're wearing a one piece and you can't easily change your whole appliance. You can fix little holes like that. You can use medical tape to cover your filter if you're going to be exposed to water, for example, and your filter might be clogged because of that. You can put it over there. You can also use it around the edge of your wafer to protect it from water. So if you're swimming or doing any kind of water activity, that you're going to have a better seal around there. You're not going to have your wafer peeling on you or anything like that. So definitely keep some kind of medical tape with you when you're out and about. Another crucial thing to do is keep some kind of water bottle with you, preferably one that's that you've purchased and it's been sealed. You don't really want to go with the tap water in most places, especially if they're in underdeveloped countries or developing countries, because they do run the risk of that traveler's diarrhea. But always keep some kind of water or fluids with you as you're going about. You want to keep on top of your hydration. And I know that for some places, you may totally not be accustomed to the environment or the temperatures that you're going to, especially if you're traveling, for example, in your winter and you're going to a really hot destination, you're probably going to run into dehydration more often. And I would also suggest just bringing what you need for that day when you're going about. There's no need to bring a whole box of supplies with you, a pack of 10 wafers, for example, if you're just going on a bus tour. So bring, 2 or 3 extra changes just in case, but don't bring more than what you're actually going to be using for that single day. Now, if you're going about traveling around, you're probably going to have to empty your appliance at some point. Bathrooms can be a little tricky depending on your destination. Now, for the most part, westernized countries will have, traditional toilet that has running water and all the good stuff. But you may actually be in a destination that doesn't have a traditional toilet. So they may actually have squatting toilets and things like that. So I would probably suggest that you do your research before you actually get to your destination, so you know what the customs are, what to expect, and you're not caught off guard with that. Now, another challenge you might run into is the fact that certain countries don't actually use toilet paper. So, for us, when you're emptying your appliance, you're going to need toilet paper to make sure that your outlet is clean and that, there's no soilage or anything like that around the outlet. And if you're in a country that doesn't traditionally use toilet paper, you might run into a bit of a snag. So always try to keep some kind of toilet paper. Even, like you can get those little packages of tissue, even something like that, just to keep with you in case you actually need to use it. But for the most part, if you're traveling to a westernized country, chances are if they have a traditional toilet, they're going to have toilet paper along with that. Now, I've used many toilets in many different areas around the world, and from hotel rooms to restaurants, things like that. Any kind of tourist area, they're going to have bathrooms that are generally kept really clean. I've never really ran into any troubles emptying my appliance, and certainly shouldn't be a concern. But again, that will depend on your destination and what the customs are for the bathrooms and washrooms and things like that. Now, if you're near a beach, chances are you're going to probably want to swim. If you're not used to swimming, I would suggest putting some kind of wafer extender or flange extender on your appliance, and that way, if, for example, you're in very salty ocean water, you know that it's at least you have an extra layer of security to keep your wafer intact. For most people, that's not going to be a big concern. Our appliances are waterproof. They are designed to be wet like that. So that may not be a big concern for you. There are accessories that you can use. For example, there's support belts, there are ostomy wraps and things like that you can use. There are special bathing suits that you can wear that are made specifically for ostomates. So you've got a lot of options there. Don't let the ostomy stop you. Now, sun exposure might be a concern for some people, not only for people that are taking medication, but also ostomates. Now, if you happen to be sun tanning, you may be putting a lot more UV exposure around the area that your stoma lies. So use caution. I would still put sunscreen on as close as you can get to your stoma, especially around your appliance. But go with a sunscreen or sunblock that's non-greasy. That's definitely going to reduce the chance of it affecting your wafer negatively. So hopefully you've had fun on your trip. Now it's time to get back home. The process is going to basically work the same as it did in the last part. So you're going to go through the same flight procedures. You're going to go through the same security checkouts and that sort of thing. Keep in mind that if you're bringing home like souvenirs and extra stuff, that you're not exceeding those 311 rules that the TSA has for liquids. If at all possible, like if you're bringing home those little shampoo bottles and whatnot from your hotel, make sure that you can still fit enough of your supplies with you on the return flight. But other than that, same process. You're really not going to have many challenges coming home. And I really hope that you have enjoyed your trip, and I hope this guide helped. So I want you guys to leave me your travel tips in the comment section and let me know how traveling with an ostomy has been for you. Till the next time, take care.